book lovers, it's Jenny at Juliababyjen's Reading Room. This is my 4-year blogoversary wrap-up video for my blog. I've been doing Juliababyjen's Reading Room for 4 years now. I did a string of author interviews and giveaways in the middle of November. And my first giveaway was for a $20 Amazon gift card. And one of the entries options for that was you could ask me a question about blogging or whatever you wanted to ask me. So I decided to answer those in video form because I think it will be more fun that way. Now let's get going on the questions. I have 14 questions, I believe, to answer for you. And I was really impressed that every single one is different and unique. All right, the first question I have here is from Karen, my BFF. What's been your favorite book or author event over the last 4 years? That is a very good question. I think I'm gonna have to say Utopia. That's the only book convention that I've been to. That was in Nashville last summer, and that was a blast. I need to go to more book conventions. A little add-on answer to that question. At Utopia, my favorite thing to do with authors and books was going out to dinner with Risa Walker. She took me, Karen, and our other friend Jen out to dinner, and we had margaritas, and it was so much fun. Really cute little Mexican place, you know, kind of a hole in the wall, but really good food, and it was just really fun. We gabbed for a long time, so that's probably been my favorite so far. All right, then my friend Lauren from what is it, Always in Me, I think is her blog name. I can't remember. Sorry, Lauren. My friend Lauren asked, who was your first author interview? I can tell you who that was off the top of my head. It was David Estes. He was my very first author interview. He was my guinea pig, and it went really well. Oh, another good friend Holly asked me, what has been one of your favorite blogging moments? I have one. I don't know if this is my very favorite, but it just sprung into my head. I will never forget this. I did a little review on a short story from the Crusade series by Nancy Holder. The novella off the top of my head, but I did a little review on my blog for it, and Nancy Holder commented on my blog post, and I was just on cloud 9 for weeks after that because it was so totally random. I didn't even tweet it to her or anything. I'm not sure how she found it, but yeah, that was pretty darn cool. All right, then I've got from Ashfa, I've got, what annoys you more, love triangles or insta-love? That's a tough one. You know, I don't really dwell on the love triangles and insta-love, I guess, as much as other readers do. I notice it, but it doesn't automatically make me not like a book, or make me, I try not to get too, I can't think of the word. It's very cliched, but I try not to get too judgmental, I guess, because there are some books that I've read that have really bad romance things in them, like the insta-love and love triangles, but the rest of the book was really good, and it was still enjoyable to read if you kind of blocked out the romance. Romance is not the main reason I read a book, honestly, unless it's a romance that I'm reading, like maybe a contemporary. But if I'm reading like a fantasy or a dystopian, a little bit of romance is fine, and it doesn't bother me at all. But it's not my main reason for reading the book, especially if it's a dystopian. I can do without the romance entirely, honestly. So I tend to ignore a lot of the romance unless it's a huge factor in the series. I guess love triangles are kind of bugging me more than insta-love, because I have an issue itself with the word insta-love, because I think, you know, yeah, there's some really bad cases of it I've read that, yes, it was definitely insta-love and it didn't make any sense, and yeah, it was just not very well done, and those bug me. But, you know, as far as like insta-love in general, I think that people forget is these books are about teenagers. And I'm sorry, but when I was a teenager, I could fall in love at the drop of a hat with, you know, I mean, it was more like a crush, I guess, more than like full-blown love. And I have an issue more with like falling into like deep love really quickly, maybe, because I think that does require more time for that to develop. But as far as being infatuated with someone and crushing on them, I don't think there's any issue with that. I mean, that's what teenagers do, at least from my experience. You just, when you're a teenager, you can't wait to fall in love. You can't wait to have a boyfriend. You can't wait for your first kiss. You can't wait for all that stuff. It's like you honestly almost go out and seek it. So I don't have an issue with that in books as much. Love triangles, a little more. My biggest issue with love triangles is probably the fact that it's so formula with one girl and two guys. And to me, it feels like an ego thing for the author sometimes. Like, you know, you as a woman, sometimes it gives you the sense of power if guys really like you. And if there's a bunch of guys that really like you, or two or three, and they're fighting over you, every girl loves that idea. I don't know if they'd actually like it in real life, but they love that whole idea. And so that's where that comes from, and that's why it became so popular, I think, and with writers, is because it's something that especially teenage girls would really like. And so if you're telling the story from a female protagonist point of view, especially a first-person narrative, it makes you feel like you're the one who's got all these guys craving you. So adult readers, I think, have more issues with that than teenagers, because adults realize how unrealistic that whole thing is. There aren't too many guys out there when you're teenagers that will go to the lengths that some of these guys in books go to fight over this girl. There are times where I could see it happening, but yeah. So I guess love triangles is the long-winded answer to that question. Sorry, that was kind of long. Then I've got from Jamie. If you were a book character, what world would you like to live in? Wow. Well, I might have to go with Hogwarts on that. On Harry Potter's world, I think that would be the coolest world to live in. Really cool. Especially after Voldemort's dead. This one's from Alina. What has been the hardest book to review and why? Hardest book to review, I can tell you the answer to that. It was, and it's not because the book sucked, the book was great. It was The Moon Dwellers by David Estes. The reason that it was really hard for me to review was because it was my very first David Estes book I ever read. And I was friends with him before I read a single book. So it was a little intimidating to try to review it, because because I was having trouble, I guess, separating the blogging thing from the friend thing in that instance. And it was really hard for me to write that review. It came out okay, I think. Like I said, it wasn't because I didn't love the book, but my problem was, like, I love the book a lot, and so I wanted to gush all this praise on it, and then I'm like, well, would I really be gushing this much praise if he wasn't my friend? I need to keep this more professional, and so, you know, I came to terms with it. Now I don't have any problem reviewing his books. I've done enough that I can separate it out, but yeah, that was seriously, I think, the hardest review I've ever written. Oh, I got Z on here. Z, hi Z. I know she's watching this. Okay, she asked me a whole bunch of questions. She said, I know we love YA, but I was wondering, what are your favorite adult books? Good question there. Really good question. Okay, my favorite adult books, my very favorite book of all time is an adult book. It's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. And I've talked about it before on my channel, so I'm not going to go into huge detail, but it's a philosophy kind of book. It's a nonfiction, but it's a really fascinating story. If you have not read it, I really recommend reading it. It's one of those books that people either love or hate, though. So if you get like 100 pages in, or maybe even less than that, and you're not into it, then go ahead and just skip it, because you probably won't be if you get that far in and aren't enjoying it. Basically, this guy's life is just so interesting, and it just blew my mind. It's a very mental thing. There's a lot of philosophy going on it. The guy is a genius. So, and then he has like this alternate personality. I don't want to get into too much, but it's really fascinating. Really recommend reading that. Another favorite book, well, Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. It's one of my favorites. Another adult book, Poison the Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. That's a really, really, really good book. I recommend that one. That was when I was in my Oprah book phase, and I read all the Oprah books, or most of them. But that is one of the best books I've ever read. I really recommend everybody read that book. I, Thomas by Dean Koontz. One of my favorite books ever, the whole series. And just about anything by Dean Koontz. I love Dean Koontz. I don't know, that's a pretty good answer for that, I think. There's probably more, but those are 3 really good ones. Favorite children's or middle grade book? Ingalls Wilder, probably. On the Banks of Plum Creek is my favorite of the series. That is been one of my top 5 favorite books for years, and it hasn't ever dropped off of that list. I love that book. Another one in that series that I really love is Long Winter. The Long Winter, oh my goodness. Yeah, anytime I feel like my life sucks, that's a really good book to read, because it makes your problems pale in comparison to what those poor pioneers had to go through to survive. I really like A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. The whole quartet, the 5 of those books, that is a really fabulous series, and actually I read it as an adult. But yes, those books were way ahead of their time, and they get so good. First book is good, but I think my favorite in it was the 4th book in the series, Many Waters, which is, they kind of go back in time to like Noah's Ark time, but it's more fantasy, and it's really good. So those are a couple of my favorites. Oh, and then it says, then outside of all age ranges, what's your favorite overall genre? Fantasy. Easy. I love fantasy. I love to escape when I read, and fantasy does that. I like all kinds of fantasy. Probably high fantasy is my favorite. I love fantasy. All right, thanks, Z. Those are good questions. Then I've got Alicia. Do you read leisurely, or do you have a set time of day that you allow yourself to read? A little of both. Yeah, I almost read every day. There are some days that I don't always get to anymore. As far as a time of day that I allow myself to read, my days are so different. It's probably the most normal time for me to read is before bed. But I will read during the day as well. It just depends on the day. And do I read leisurely? Mostly. But I do try to set I'm kind of a planner by nature, so whenever I wake up in the morning, I kind of in my head have a plan for the day of what I'm going to try to do. I don't always pick exactly what I'm going to do it that day, but I have a list of things that I want to do, and usually reading a specific book is on my list. I usually do have a goal every day of how much I want to read. Don't always do it, but I try to think ahead a little bit on that and plan it out. It doesn't always work that way, but I try, I guess. All right, this is from Kritika. Hi, Kritika. What was one of the hardest things you had to do as a book blogger? I guess maybe sometimes when I went through a stage where I did a ton of blog tours for a while, I wanted to get used to doing them, and I've cut back. But when I was doing like several a month, like 4 or 5 a month, that was probably hard. Getting the books read, getting it reviewed, getting my blog post up on time. That was probably the hardest thing. There was a couple of them that I really had to push myself to get the book finished and get it all done. So that was probably the hardest. So mostly time crunch issues, I guess. If you have a specific date you need to post something and you're not ready and you're pushing yourself to get it done, and then it's not very fun. So that's why I kind of cut back, because it's not as much fun to do that. So I guess that's maybe the hardest thing. Other than that, or maybe, I don't know, maybe learning technical stuff a little bit, but honestly, that's not that hard either. I have a really techie husband, so if I'm confused and can't figure something out, he'll figure it out for me. So I'm lucky in that, I guess. But yeah, I guess that's maybe the hardest thing. All right, this is from Judy. This is a good question. If your house is on fire and you could only rescue 5 books, what would they be? That is a really good question, and it's a really hard one. Okay, I know one that I would rescue right off the top of my head. I have a really old copy of Gone with the Wind. It's like a collector's copy. It's not one of the original press, but it's still worth a couple $100. So I would definitely grab that book, and it's in it's like in a display case thing, so it might be hard to get to, but I would definitely try to grab that book because it's, you know, a really cool book, and it's amazing that I have it. My mom actually gave it to me for Christmas. And then other than that, I cheat a little bit. Can I just say all of David Estee's books for one of them, or the rest of them? I don't know, because I mean, I guess I could get replacements and he would sign them for me, but they're signed books, and he's one of my closest friends, so they have sentimental value. And so yeah, I would want to grab all of those. Other than that, like, you know, yeah, it would suck to lose all your books, but these are all, you can replace these. So I don't really think I have any books that I guess another book that I would probably grab, or two books, I have these really pretty velvet edition Hallmark books, The Secret Garden and Anne of Green Gables, that my sister gave me one year. So for sentimental reasons, I'd probably grab those because they're from my sister, and I don't think I could replace those. But, you know, like normal books, it wouldn't be like I'd pick my favorite book because you can replace these. And then other than that, just a stack of signed books, probably. My Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini Taylor book is signed, and I would probably try to save that too because my friend Karen gave it to me for my birthday. So I would want to, I would definitely want to try to save that one too. It's not like it's easy to get a Laini Taylor signed book. It's from my friend. So that's another sentimental thing. So I guess I'd be thinking more sentimental. And then Gone with the Wind book, not only is it hard to replace, but it's from my mom. So we have that connection. We both love Gone with the Wind. So those would probably be, I don't know what order those would fall. I just try to grab as many as I could grab. That was probably cheating a little bit, but all right. This is from Rose. Hi, Rose. What is your favorite book of all time and why? Well, I just said my favorite book of all time is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig. Why? I think it's because it's one of those books I haven't reread it a lot. I think I've read it total maybe 4 times over the course of my life. The first time I read it, I was 18. You get something different out of it every time you read it, depending on where you are in your life. Like I said, it's a very philosophical book, and I was really into that when I was younger. Not as much now, but I still kind of get into philosophy a little bit. And so I guess just that whole, it's so unique, and you just, like I said, you get something different out of it every time you read it. And I don't know, it's just one of those books that just really stuck with me. So I guess that's the why there. Right, Kelly asked me, who is your favorite author? Okay, well, 2 answers to this. My favorite author that I like as a person is David Estes. My favorite author as far as writing goes is J.K. Rowling, without a doubt. Yeah, genius. I don't think there's anybody on the planet who's more brilliant than this woman. Elizabeth asked me, what is your inspiration for writing? Well, I'm not sure if she asked this because she thought I was a writer or if she just wanted to know, like, writing reviews or what. But I'm not really a writer per se. I've never written a book. I guess I've written short stories, but a really long time. I wrote some poems, but again, a really long time. I went through a stage where I wrote lots of stuff. I don't write as much of that kind of thing anymore. If I write now, I write more rambling stuff in my journals or my blog, reviews. So for inspiration for that, I don't know. I don't know that I have an inspiration. It depends on what I'm writing, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes I just like to write down my thoughts, I guess. It's easier when sometimes I get my brain goes crazy and I need to get them out of my head sometimes. So I just jot down. If you read one, I have a lot of journals and no one's ever read them and no one ever will, except maybe Daryl when I die. And I won't, I'll get to a certain age and I'll probably burn them because I don't want anybody really to read them. They're just they're nonsense. Really, they are. They're just rambly. When I wrote them, I wasn't thinking about actually just getting some thoughts out, basically. So they're so random and out of that. Now, for things that I actually wrote a long time ago, or actually wrote something structured, my inspiration was usually, like, all my poetry was inspired by Daryl. Every poem I ever wrote was for him, and I made him a book, basically, of when we were married a year, our 1-year anniversary. I gave it to him, and I had written, like, over that course of that first year we were married, like 30 poems or something. And so I put them in this book for him. And then every year on our anniversary, I'd write him another poem, and he add to his book. And sometimes I just randomly write him poems and put it in there. And I haven't written him a poem for probably 10 years. So I've been thinking about that. Like, it's been a really long time since I did that. I should probably do that. Maybe I'm not as inspired anymore. I don't know. But yeah, so Daryl inspired me to write all that. Short stories, I don't think I really had an inspiration that I can think of. I just felt like writing something. This is my last question is from Kendra. Hi, Kendra. What do you feel is the best part of blogging? This is such a fun question. I'm glad you asked me this. My favorite thing, or what do I feel is the best part about blogging, is the connections with people, and the fact that as a blogger, you hold an enormous amount of power to help people's careers. I started blogging because I just wanted to express my feelings and thoughts about books, and it's morphed into, I understand what blogging is about more. It's not just that. It's that every time you write about a book, you are, exposing that book to other people who maybe had not heard of it, and maybe they won't read it. Even if you wrote a bad review on a book, if your review is a thoughtful review and that you put exactly why you didn't like the book, and someone's reading that review is like, oh, well, that wouldn't bother me. This book sounds good to me. They might read it, and that does happen. So negative reviews are not a bad thing to write as long as you're, professional about it. As long as you're giving, writing a good constructed review is really what counts. So you're getting all kinds of free publicity to authors, and especially self-published authors. That is amazing. Just awesome. Just the feeling, because book bloggers, we love books. We love the whole idea of books. So to make someone's career or help someone's career who's writing books is just the coolest feeling ever. And that is why I do this still. Because sometimes I have trouble getting motivated to do any blogging at all, and that is still why I keep my blog going, because I think it's really, really cool, and I just love that. Yeah, we get perks too, but and we get taken for granted sometimes. I don't really care. I don't need every single review I write. I don't need every author to tell me, oh, thank you so much for writing that review. I don't need that. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it to help people because I want to express my love for books. So I just want to keep the world of books and reading alive. And, for a while it was kind of dying, and at least it felt that way to me. And it kind of got a new life, and this whole new YA thing has really given a new life to reading. And I think more kids read nowadays than they did when I was a kid, I think. For pleasure. I don't think when I was a kid very many kids read for pleasure, and I think more kids do that now because it's more pop, in our pop culture. It's just more there and prevalent, and the books are way better now. So I think that's awesome, and I think blogging and social media is a main reason why books are so good and getting popular again, especially with the younger audiences. So yeah, so that's the most important part about blogging and the best part of it for me. All right, that's the end of my questions. I will edit this. It's pretty long, but that is it. That's my questions. Thanks, guys, for asking me such good questions. If you have any more, feel free to put any comments below or comment any of my answers or whatever. And I will talk to y'all later. Have a good day. Bye.